So you missed it too? But you know.
No, I came here. Sure, but I did.
She's a beautiful woman.
Good morning.
Always has been.
Do you know her?
Good to see you two. We're gonna have
Somebody here knows you.
How are you? One of the first classes that NK is offering this semester. And I'm a facilitator, not the instructor, so I'm just the facilitator. And they always tell me, make sure everybody signs in. So if you don't sign in, I'm in trouble. And you didn't sign in, but you're what? Well, did you? You signed yourself in? I got in trouble a couple of years ago because I was on the curriculum committee. They said, make sure the facilitators know they have to sign in. I said, I never signed in. He said, I know, your wife always signs in. So. Anyway, welcome to this class on meditation. And I'd like to introduce our instructor for this semester. L.D. Wofford, Lon Douglas Wofford. And he's been working on this for several years. So I'd like you to welcome him here, and it's all yours, Lon.
Okay, thanks, Dad. Okay, today, well, the title of the seminar is Tranquility Meditation for the Relief of Pain and Suffering. So specifically, we will be looking into a particular kind of meditation called Tranquility Meditation. And the first seminar's main topic is psychophysiological coherence, the neurophysiology of Tranquility Meditation, and then the practical section will involve beginning meditative experience and introduction to resonant breathing. All right, the course materials are all available for download or review at the website, narrogatealliance.org. Now, currently, all of the materials are just on the home page for all of the seminars. So you can just go out to the home page and download everything that's available today. As of next week, we'll have them segregated into the 3 different courses on a separate page for each course. And they'll be password protected. In this case, the user ID is trmedseminar, all in lowercase letters. And the password is nkafall2012. Now, on the home page right now is the syllabus for the course, and it has all of this information in there as well. So, and we'll be reviewing this periodically as we go through the 8-week course. Okay, everyone have that? All right. Materials will become available sort of as I get them finished. Primary materials, such as the PowerPoint presentation for the seminar, will be available on the day of the seminar. So you'll always be able to get those immediately. Other written materials sort of depend upon class discussion and other input that I get from you. So they'll be available on the Thursday following the seminar. Usually, unless something were to come up. And the audio-video files will be available the following week. I'm videotaping all of the seminars, so they'll be available out there as an additional resource. It takes a little while to download and edit them, so that's why I'm giving myself a week to get them out there. Yes?
Can you go back and what was the password?
Oh, the password is NKA Fall, F-A-L-L, 2012, 2012. Okay?
That's what I need.
Yes, right now you don't need anything. Yes, you can just go out on the home page and all the materials for today's seminar are out there. You can download them or review them online. Like I said, next week everything will be behind the password and on a separate page. All right? And like I said, the syllabus has all this information in it. So if you needed that, you can just download the syllabus and all the passwords and everything are in there as well. All right, there is a scheduling note. This course will have a brief hiatus as of next week. So the seminar won't be held next week. It will be held the next time on the 25th. Okay, so just make a note of that. Seminar 2 will start 2 weeks from today. All right, just a little bit about the research behind the programs. I spent about the last 14 years doing the research. At present, there are 30,281 research items. They include 13,887 books that have been reviewed, 6,913 peer-reviewed articles, 8,869 audio files, 612 video files. So it's a fairly large research synthesis. The research bibliography currently has 4,093 entries of those 30,000 items. As we move forward, I'll of course add more and more items to the bibliography so that they will be available to you for your research if you want to. The bibliography will be available as of next week, so you'll have access to the bibliography. In addition, each week, the books that I bring to show you, I'll have a bibliography of these in the materials for each week, so you can just go take a look. Rather than wade through 4,000 entries, you'll just have to take a look at the few. Okay? The bibliography will be organized. I'll have at least 2, maybe additional versions of it. One by alphabetically by author, and the other by subject. So it'll be easier for you to find them if you wanted to go do additional research. Next, what can you expect to learn over the next 8 weeks of the course? We will have 8 90-minute seminars divided up into 2 45-minute segments. The first segment will concern theory, history, explanatory models, things that will help you understand what it is that we are trying to do here. So basically, we'll try to divide it up sort of 10-minute introductory segment, where we review previous seminar topics, preview today's seminar topics, and then have a brief question and answer period. 30 minutes lecture on current topics roughly, and then 5-minute question and answer segment after that. Always interrupt me if you have a question. That won't interrupt the flow or anything. Then the 45 minutes of guided practice typically will be divided sort of like this. 5 minutes of premeditation, orientation, and preparation based on the lecture. 20 minutes of meditation practice, sometimes all together in 20-minute segments, sometimes broken up so we can discuss the results. 5 minutes of post-meditation reorientation, then 10 minutes just debriefing and class discussion over what the experience was like, and then 5 minutes to preview next week's seminar or the next seminar. All right, you will learn these elements of meditation. Number 1, the purpose of tranquility meditation, the history of tranquility meditation, the theory of tranquility meditation, the neurophysiology of tranquility meditation, and of course the practice of tranquility meditation, including the following skills. You will be able to, establishing and maintaining a stable posture, establishing and maintaining a state of neurophysiological coherence by practicing resonant breathing and other techniques, establishing and maintaining a relaxed, focused awareness of thoughts, feelings, and sensations. This is typically, traditionally, historically called the fair witness state. And using the fair witness state to investigate various components of your experience. All right, our general instructional objectives fit in with what we've just seen. At the end of the seminar, each student will be able to describe to others the purpose, history, theory, and neurophysiology of tranquility meditation. We'll have covered it so many times that you'll just know it. You'll be able to explain it to someone else. At the end of the seminar, each student will be able to enter a state of tranquility themselves, and they also will be able to guide others into this unique meditative state. Once you know how to do it, it's easy to guide someone else there. And finally, at the end of the seminar, each student will be able to establish and maintain a fair witness state during meditation and also during their normal daily activities. The fair witness state is a useful meditative technique to use all the time. All right. Any questions about the brief overview? All right. Okay, so the knowledge lecture for today's seminar, Psychophysiological Coherence, the Neurophysiology of Tranquility Meditation. We'll be discussing the following items in the lecture today. First, we'll take a look at the Buddha's Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path,
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91, 92, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97, 98, 99, 100, 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, 116, 117, 118, 119, 120, 121,
Next, we'll take a look at a brief passage from Dante's Inferno. Then we'll take a look at soteriology and the purpose of meditation. Finally, we'll do the first explanatory model about psychophysiological coherence. We'll talk about brainwave states, the psychophysiology of meditation specifically, heart rate variability, breathing rate and phase-locked loops, and finally, I will introduce you to the simplest method for achieving psychophysiological coherence. All right, first, the Four Noble Truths.
Lon?
Yeah.
Question.
Oh, question?
What's this soteriology, whatever?
We'll get there.
Huh?
We will get there. We will get there. Siddhartha Gautama Buddha was born in 563 BCE and died in 483 BCE. And he developed a comprehensive system of soteriology based upon these Four Noble Truths. First, recognize the existence of suffering, and in the Pali language it's called dukkha. Next, recognize the origin of suffering. Next, recognize the cessation of suffering. And finally, recognize the path to the cessation of suffering. In other words, basically, he said this place is extremely difficult to live in. It's painful. It's dangerous. Life is sometimes short, sometimes beset with difficulties that we cannot even comprehend. So we have to recognize that first before we can make any progress. Then we have to understand the origin of the suffering. And basically, he said the origin of suffering comes down to two things. Number one, a misunderstanding of the nature of reality. And two, greed. Those are the two sources of suffering. We will discuss the misunderstanding of the nature of reality as we continue in the seminar session. Also, that's basically the entire history of philosophy course, is taking a look at this misunderstanding of the nature of reality. Finally, recognize that suffering can cease. And finally, recognize that the path to the cessation of suffering is available to us. He called it the Noble Eightfold Path to the cessation or extinction of suffering. It includes those 8 items. The bottom 3 are the ones we will be concerned with because they are the core of meditative practice. And he called it concentration, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So we will learn all of those things. It's all sort of incorporated in the meditative practice. So if we encounter suffering and we wish to end the cycle of suffering, meditation is the way to do that according to the Buddha. Now, if we fast forward a little bit to 1265 CE, we'll take a look at Dante Alighieri. He wrote the Divine Comedy right around 1300. And it's divided up into 3. Has everybody read the Divine Comedy? They used to teach it in college. It used to be sort of one of those things that we always had to read. Anyway, he divided the entire cycle is divided up into 3 sections. This is my copy over here. The first section is called the Inferno, hell. The second section is called the Purgatorio, which is purgatory. I misspelled that. I'll change that. And then finally the Paradiso, which is paradise. So he's describing these 3 facets of our existence here on the earth. We have the facet of experience of hell, we have a facet of experience of purgatory, and we have a facet of the experience of paradise. All available to us right here, right now. In Canto 3, line 9, there's this most famous quote out of the Inferno. Lasciate ogni speranza voi che entrate, which is translated specifically as abandon every hope, all ye who enter here. This is the inscription to the entrance of hell. Okay? Abandon every hope, all ye who enter here. Now, why would he suggest that as you are entering hell? Keeping in mind that this place is what he's describing, the place of suffering. Why would he suggest that we abandon hope? And more specifically, what should we replace hope with if we're going to abandon hope? We can replace it, well, we could. Hope, yeah. We could certainly replace it with despair. Yeah. Well, that's already there. He's suggesting that we abandon hope because we're about to enter the place of pain and suffering. Okay, if you are in the place of pain and suffering and you have hope, all you'll do is just increase the suffering. All right, you have to replace hope with a specific process. Hope alone is not adequate. Hope alone will not help you. Hope alone will simply add to your despair and pain and suffering. Okay? So that's why that's on the entrance to that point. And that's what the rest of the entire Divine Comedy is about. Learning the techniques, learning the technology, learning the ways of coping with the fact that we live in a place filled with suffering and pain. So keep that in mind. Hope is basically not helpful in a place of suffering and pain. You need a method. You need something you can do. Not just sit around hoping it gets better, because it ain't going to happen. All right? You have to do something. You have to take control of the situation. And that's why, and that's what the entire 3 volumes are about, is about how to deal with all of that situation. So this is Dante's basic interpretation of soteriology. Okay, soteriology, which brings us to the purpose of meditation. Soteriology is the division of philosophy concerned with salvation. Salvation is the deliverance from pain and suffering. It has Greek origins, soteria. There's the Greek words over there. In Buddhism, it equates to the extinction of suffering, which is what the Noble Eightfold Path is about. If we live in hell and we're subjected to all of this pain and suffering, and we should abandon hope and find some method of dealing with it, this is the method. And soteriology is the division of philosophy concerned with that method. Okay? The primary method of a soteriological system is tranquility and insight meditations. Those are the primary methods throughout history, from the very beginning until the present day. Any system that wishes to deal directly with the fact that this place is difficult has to have some tranquility and insight meditative components. And they all do. It doesn't matter which epoch you select, it doesn't matter which person you select, it doesn't matter which system you select, they will all point you in the same direction. Meditation is the key component, the core component of all systems throughout time, instead of hope. Okay? If we sit around hoping that other people will help, politicians will help, situations will change, nothing will, we're going to be in big trouble. We have to take control of the situation. Okay, so did that answer your question about soteriology? Okay, good. So basically, it is the term we use for what we're doing. Soteriology is the purpose of meditation, to end suffering and to basically save our souls, to use the old terminology. All right. So, that's why we're going to practice this. That's why we're learning it. That's why you're here. Because you said, hey, I have some pain here and I want to be able to deal with it directly. And so we will learn specific methods of meditation that will help you to eliminate the feelings of pain, at least temporarily. All right? And in order to understand the process, we have to take a look at a state called psychophysiological coherence. The first thing we want to take a look at is electroencephalographic brainwave patterns. In 1921, a German scientist named Hans Berger, invented, well, he'd invented it about 20 years earlier, but he wrote a paper on the use of the EEG. And he said, look, you can hook these things up to your scalp and it will show that the brain actually has a specific pattern of behaviors. It has a specific pattern of electrical activity. And he was hoping through this process to find a scientific proof for the existence of the soul. That was his intention when he started looking into the research about 1900. In 1921, he published his first paper. It was picked up by everybody across the planet. Pretty soon everybody had an EEG machine and they were publishing papers everywhere. These are the 5 typical states that are listed. There are other states that are out there, other different brainwave patterns, depending upon what the research is looking for. Some of these are subdivided into different groups, but these are the basic 5 that appear in most of the literature. And you may even be familiar with some of these. Starting from the slowest, we start off with the delta cycle, which is about 0.5 to 3.5 cycles per second. All right, this occurs only in deep, slow-wave sleep. So when we are in that deep, slow-wave sleep cycle, the nervous system is basically just barely ticking over. Just idling. It's not really doing much of anything at all. And that's because the body itself is busy repairing all the damage done for the day and resetting the basic physiological patterns for the next day. So the nervous system itself is doing very little. Then theta, which is 4 to 7 hertz, is present when we dream. When we're in a rapid eye movement state, you'll see a big spike in the theta waves. Next, you'll see alpha, which is 8 to 12 cycles per second. The alpha state is a specific kind of a state. It's very unique because when the nervous system enters an alpha state, it synchronizes the entire brain. The whole nervous system now oscillates at the alpha cycle. There appear to be, according to the research, there are either 3 or 4 oscillators, physical oscillators, built into the brain itself. And so they just oscillate at about 10 cycles per second. So when the rest of the nervous system begins to oscillate at 10 cycles per second, these master oscillators then pick up that and transmit it to every part of the brain. So once you enter an alpha state, the whole nervous system will synchronize to that alpha state. And that's what gives it its power, because it's a synchronized state. Then if we move into the beta state, which is roughly 13 to 30 cycles per second, this is our normal waking state. And desynchronization takes place. The nervous system is no longer synchronized. Parts of it will be oscillating really fast, parts of it will be oscillating slow, parts of it will be oscillating all over the place, depending upon what information it's processing. And finally, we enter the gamma state. We are in a gamma state. We have to work to get into a gamma state. Typically, we have to be involved in some highly focused, highly active, highly energetic athletic activity. Okay? So those of you who are athletes, this is called the zone. When you're in the zone, you're in a gamma state. And if we were to take a look at your brainwave patterns, they would be oscillating very fast. But once again, we get that synchronization effect. The entire nervous system will be oscillating at that particular frequency, whatever it happens to be set at. And that's what gives us that very narrow focus and the feeling that things are happening effortlessly. Okay, so there are 2 times in the alpha state when we are sort of quiet and internally directed, that the brain is synchronized, and next when we're in a high energy, outwardly directed state. It can also be synchronized. The psychophysiology of meditation was published in 1972, written by Dr. Wallace and Dr. Benson here, and was published in Scientific American in the February edition. And they basically did research on people who were practicing transcendental meditation. And they discovered that there were these 7 indicators of a meditative state. All of the people practicing transcendental meditation exhibited these 7 features. Now, just as a brief historical note, there was not a lot of research done prior to 1970 because there just simply were not enough people who meditated. If we go back, the first actual published work is in 1959. And it had one major meditator that they had as access to and 2 others that they had partial access to. And they had to go to China and Japan to find those 3 people. All right, so that there wasn't a lot of scientific research being done on the physiological state of meditators, because you couldn't find meditators who were, skilled at it, who were willing to go to the laboratory and be experimented on. So that all changed. When the Beatles came back and published their Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album, they had just come back from a trip to India. And they were talking about the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who was this big guru over there. And he came over here to the United States in 1967. And they publicized all of that information about him. And voila, overnight we now had, instead of having no meditators in the United States, we had about 72,000. Just like that. So from 1970 until about 1983, there were this bunch of people out there that were willing to be experimented on. And so there's a bunch of research being done at that time on all of these people who practice transcendental meditation. So that's where this information is coming from. So the 7 indicators are, 1, that there's reduced oxygen consumption. Second, there's reduced carbon dioxide elimination. So the metabolism is slow. That's what those 2 things do. There's a reduced respiratory rate. Your breathing's more slow, and we'll return to that in a bit. There's a reduced heart rate. We'll also return to that. There's increased alpha rhythm and decreased beta rhythm. There's reduced blood pressure, and there's reduced muscular tension. So those are the 7 indicators of a meditative state. Notice this, increased alpha. All right? Dr. Benson followed that study up, and others that he did, with a book, this book, here, called The Relaxation Response. He said if meditation is so valuable for us, physiologically speaking, there should be a simple method of achieving it. Rather than having to go pay, $600 or $700 to the Maharishi in order to learn how to do this. So he published this book called The Relaxation Response, and he suggested that there are 4 components to a meditative state. 1, a quiet environment. 2, a word or phrase to repeat, or an object or process on which to focus one's attention. Now, if you were to go to a TM training center during this time, you would have had to pay them several $100s, and they would have instructed you in these 4 things here, and they would have provided you a mantra, a word or a phrase to speak while you are meditating. And they claimed that this was a specific mantra that was given to them by supernatural beings, and that it was specifically attuned to you and you alone. And that it was secret, so don't tell anybody what your mantra is. Okay? And the reason why they said it was secret because it was mostly the same mantra for everybody. So that's one of the reasons Dr. Benson decided to write this book, to see if he could cut through all of that commercialism. So those are the 4 steps that Dr. Benson talks about in order to achieve a meditative state. And it's really simple. I mean, obviously, any one of us can do that. Now let's take a look at the origins of meditation. In the middle-length discourses of the Buddha, which is here, in the discourse called the Greater Discourse on the Foundations of Mindfulness, the Buddha talks about the 4 requirements for meditation. 1, you need a quiet environment. Okay, in his language, he talks about finding a place outdoors near a tree or a river, so that it's quiet and peaceful and pleasant and outdoors. Next, you need a word or phrase to repeat, or an object or process in which to focus one's attention. Okay, he suggests the breathing. Focus on the breathing. Next, you need the adoption of a passive attitude. Once you've focused on whatever it is you're going to focus on, just relax and keep the focus where it is. And finally, a comfortable, stable position. For him, it would have been the lotus position. Okay, with your legs crossed over each other. And we'll take a look at that later on. Okay? So if we take a look at those 4 requirements in the discourse, they are identical to the ones that Dr. Benson suggested in 1975. So again, it's fairly simple in theory to accomplish this. Those 4 things are available to us. They don't require any investment of time or investment of money. All they require is a quiet place and the investment of about 20 minutes of time. All right, so what's going on here? For thousands and thousands of years, people have been practicing meditation worldwide. They received the benefits from it without ever understanding what was going on, because they just didn't have the research capability at the time. Once they started researching it, however, they started to collect a whole bunch of information. The 7 physiological indicators were the first clue about what's happening. In 1985, we made another huge breakthrough when people were looking at the power spectrum of the heart rate. They had developed an electrocardiogram machine that had a computer attached to it, and the computer was evaluating the heart rate at a very, very fine level, a microfine level. And they began to discover that there were lots of things going on. It wasn't just, the simple rhythm that we thought it was. It was a very complex wave pattern. Okay, and they discovered what is called, now they call heart rate variability. And this book here has a really useful introduction to heart rate variability. Okay? Heart rate variability is the changes in the heart rate during normal breathing cycle. Now, what happens when you inhale, it increases the sympathetic tone of the nervous system and it increases heart rate. So your heart rate will actually go faster when you inhale. When you exhale, it decreases autonomic nervous system input and the heart rate slows down. And this is a pattern that continues as long as we are breathing. Okay? We'll find out through research they discovered that the best ratio of inhalation, well, of exhalation to inhalation is 3:1. That is, the exhalation should be 3 times longer than the inhalation. Because what that will do is it will provide more parasympathetic nervous system tone to offset all of the sympathetic nervous system tone that we normally deal with. What happens is we're out here, we're running around, we've got 15,000 things to do. We're not breathing very carefully. We're breathing, fast and shallowly. And all that is putting a lot of sympathetic nervous system activity into the body. So that's why we start to feel jittery at the end of the day. All right? The sympathetic nervous system is regulated mostly by adrenaline. Okay? So all of the effects of the adrenaline are that jitteriness, the edginess, the fact that we can't think straight and all those other things. That's because we have increased sympathetic nervous system tone, is what they call it. Okay? And we're not exhaling in this ratio. Normally that ratio is reversed. Okay? And rapid inhalations and rapid exhalations. And that's what causes that causes a whole series of physiological problems. We'll get to that a little later on. I just wanted to introduce the topic. So the heart rate variability is the total difference between the heart rate during inhalation and the heart rate during exhalation. So they actually come up with the ratio, heart rate variability. The greater the heart rate variability, the greater the health of the organism. All right? As heart rate variability approaches 0, it's going to be a heart attack, guaranteed. Okay, so if there are signs of a heart attack and you go into the hospital, if they know what they're doing, they'll put you on the ECG machine immediately. They'll just ask you what the heart rate variability is. And if it is approaching 0, they know that there's a heart attack like right now. And they will take steps to stop that. As soon as HRV goes to 0, heart rate stops. Yes?
Isn't this variability between inhalation and exhalation normal? Do we all have that to some degree?
Well, it's the ratio that's important.
Yeah, but I mean, we all...
No, we don't. The only time we have that particular ratio
No,
is
I don't mean the ratio. I mean, in general, that happens.
No, that doesn't happen. That's why we have that. Take a look at how you're breathing. Are you breathing high in your chest? Fast and shallow? Okay, so if you're breathing high in your chest up here, thoracic breathing pattern, because you're standing up or sitting down, okay, and you do not have long, slow exhalations and fairly rapid inhalations, you're not going to have good heart rate variability. Okay, it is not something that we naturally have, especially in our modern society, which is why we have a lot of the physiological problems that we have. This feeds into a whole bunch of problems. Okay, so no, it's not natural. This is not a natural. Heart rate variability has to be, we have to work at it. We have to work at maintaining the balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Okay? Again, we can't just sit around hoping that our heart rate variability is good, because it won't be. We have to work at it. We have to do it. We have to make it happen. Okay. So breathing rate and phase lock loops. This was another big breakthrough, and this occurred in the early 70s. This is Dr. Robert Fried's fairly complex volume on the relationship between breathing and everything else in the physiology. A phase locked loop is an oscillating cycle controlled by a feedback loop. Typically, if you go back to the early 70s and early 80s, you had those turntables. We're old enough to remember what a turntable is. And they had that little lens on the side of it that would keep it rotating at exactly the right speed, whatever you set it at. That's a phase locked loop. What it was doing was it had a mirror in there, and it was just measuring the speed of the turntable by the reflection off the little mirrors on the side of the plaque. And so that's a phase locked loop. The respiratory rate is the oscillator for the three primary life rhythms: respiratory rate, heart rate, and brainwave rate. So those three things are locked together by phase locked loops. Okay? As respiratory rate decreases to less than 6 breaths per minute, that's 1 breath every 10 seconds, heart rate and EEG begin to synchronize. As respiratory rate decreases to 3 breaths per minute, that's 1 breath every 20 seconds, respiration rate, heart rate, and EEG synchronize completely. Okay, so this answers your question. The only time you get the heart rate variability pattern is when you are only breathing 3 times a minute. And we have to work at that. Okay, so the pattern that we're looking for is 3 breaths a minute. That's 1 breath every 20 seconds. Heart rate will drop below 60 beats a minute at that point, usually right around 50, 55. The electroencephalogram will show a brainwave rhythm of 10 cycles per second, the alpha rhythm. Okay? And if the respiratory rhythm equals 15-second exhalations and 5-second inhalations, then HRV is stabilized. And we get maximum balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. And that offsets the problem that we create by not having this pattern. Okay, so 1 breath every 3 minutes, one breath every 20 seconds, 3 breaths a minute. That's where we'll be headed. All right. The question then is, what is the simplest method for achieving this? If you go out and take a look at the patent office applications, there's whole bunches of very strange and expensive ways of doing this, of trying to achieve this breath rate. But there's one simple way, one easy way, one guaranteed way, one infallible way, one way that works no matter what. What is it? Valium would do it. But what is the way? What is the way of guaranteeing that the breath is going to be slowed down to 3 breaths per minute? Humming. Humming will guarantee that. So that's why the Buddha recommended a word or a phrase to say, because as you say that word or phrase, you're controlling the exhalation cycle. Okay? And of course, the most classic mantra is the Om mantra, which if you say it, turns into a hum. Okay, so humming is the way that we accomplish this. Humming is the key to psychophysiological coherence. It is the foundation for all of the psychophysiological alterations that lead into the meditative state. Now, we don't need to hum. There are other ways of doing that. Sit and find a tree to sit under. Make sure that your breathing slows down to 3 breaths a minute, and that'll do it. It's the 3 breaths a minute that makes the difference. So any way that you can accomplish that, once it crosses that threshold, psychophysiological coherence occurs, and the meditative state just arises out of nowhere. Okay? So humming. Humming is the answer to that. All right, questions? Discussion? All right, so the key to meditation is that simple. You have to reduce the breath rate down to 3 breaths a minute. And the easiest way to do that is simply to hum. Okay, so I have created an audio track that will help us to hum so that we can achieve the psychophysiological coherent state and then enter into the meditative state. Very easily, very simple. Any questions or comments or discussion? Yeah.
Right before that book that was on there before, is it an old book where you couldn't get it still?
Which one is that?
The
All
last
of these books are still available.
Okay, it was the last one about the clinical one, yeah.
Yeah, this one is still available, yeah, Dr. Free. And you'll, like I said, you can download this. All of these materials are available on the website, okay? So I'll put that slide
Is the
back
book
up.
available?
What?
Is the book available?
Yeah.
On the internet?
Yes. Yeah, you can go out and order this, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all of
Some
these
them
are
I've
available.
tried and they're out of print or whatever, so, okay.
Yeah, sometimes, well, if they're out of print, then check for a used copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only book, we'll get to this one a little later in the course, but there's only one book that you might have difficulty obtaining, and that's Dr. John C. Eccles' last book. And the last time I checked, there's like 3 copies left on the planet, and you're gonna have to pay about $1,200 for it. So that's the only one that I've ever seen that you have difficulty with. All of these others are fairly easy to get. Okay. Also, a number of them are available at the library. And of course, Scientific American is available at the library. So you can take a look at the original article. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing for me, it's important that I got that little thing in the back of the throat vibrating. It sounds more like a snore.
Oh,
She always thinks I'm asleep.
Oh, okay, okay. So you wake him up, right? Yeah, you wake him up. Yeah. Yeah, and interrupt his meditative state. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
Does the difference in a person's heartbeat have anything to do with how the result of meditation?
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a very low heartbeat,
Mm-hmm.
like 60 and in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And say a person has a heartbeat of 70,
Mm-hmm.
how does that correlate? I mean, does that mean I don't have to breathe?
Oh, because your normal heart rate is around 60 beats a minute?
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's fine, because what will happen is we're looking for whatever the psychophysiological coherent state is for us. And that will be achieved by synchronizing the 3 rhythms, whatever they happen to be.
You're an athlete?
Well, I exercise. I was asked that before. I
Mhm.
exercise, but not
Yeah,
viciously.
all of
I
this-
just have a low.
yeah, and that's fine. So whatever, as your breath rate drops below 3 breaths a minute, your heart rate will synchronize with the brainwave patterns and the breathing rhythm. Okay? So, and whatever that happens to be will just happen automatically. It'll happen naturally. And that will control it. Everything is controlled by the breath rate. Once it drops below 3 breaths a minute, well, once it drops to 3 breaths a minute, then you get these effects. Okay? So that's what we're after. That's the only thing we care about. Everything else is regulated by the body itself. We do not have any direct control over the heart rate or over the brainwave patterns. The only control we have is over the breathing patterns. So that's what we use as the control mechanism. All right, so yeah.
Are you saying 2 breaths a minute or
3.
3?
3 breaths a minute. Although in advanced meditation, it will drop even lower than that. Yeah, 3 breaths a minute is that's the threshold. Once you reach 3 breaths a minute, in that ratio, 15 seconds to 1 second, that's when all of this stuff starts to happen. Advanced meditators, they can it'll drop below 1 breath a minute. Okay, and there will be a prolonged period when they finish the exhalation, and they won't do anything. They won't breathe in. They'll just be in they'll be in a very deep meditative state at that point. Okay, so advanced meditation can drop below 1 breath a minute. Yeah.
Do you know those guys that go underwater for
Mhm.
long periods of time?
Yep.
Is this how they do it?
This is how they do it.
It's sort of like they meditate?
Yeah, well, they practice meditation and they also practice yoga breathing techniques. Yeah, if you take a look at what they actually do to prepare for it, in fact, there is, I'll bring it next time, there is the Bible for those people talks about all the stuff we're talking about, because they have to be able to regulate their breathing and then hold it as they dive down, 300-400 feet. And they're underneath the water for, 8 or 9 minutes at pretty extreme depths. So they learn how to do it. And this is how they practice. They practice meditation and they practice yoga. So, and then David Blaine did he set the world record for oxygen assisted, holding his breath when he was in the bubble with the water and everything. It was almost 20 minutes. So that was pretty impressive. And this is what he did to practice. He trained with those guys and they taught him how to do all of this stuff. I think I'd have to check the records, but I think the longest that a person, just here in normal atmosphere can hold their breath is about 11 minutes.
How long?
11 minutes.
A minute?
11 minutes.
I read 9:59.
Yeah, that's a good record too. Yeah, that's 10 minutes, so that's a long time. Underwater, it's a little less because there's all the pressures involved. So there are people out there who practice this who can hold their breath a long, long time. And while they're holding their breath, they're in this deep meditative state. It's the only way they're able to maintain it. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
So then when you're in the meditative, when you practice this regularly, wouldn't that block your heart rate?
Yeah.
You become healthy.
Yes.
Healthier.
Yes.
Because of doing the meditation.
Yes, because that's what Dr. Benson and the other guys were looking at. They were saying, we noticed that there's, reductions in blood pressure, there's reductions in overall heart rate, there's increases in heart rate variability, there's all of these physiological benefits just from meditating 20 minutes. And that's what they were noticing. Yeah, and that's because that heart rate variability and the autonomic balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, once that is rebalanced, that feeds forward into almost everything that happens to us. So that's why these benefits accrue, because it is reestablishing that autonomic balance. In addition to the psychological and spiritual benefits that we get, there's this physiological benefit as well. Okay? Anything else? All right. Hold on just a second while I change the tape. And then we'll proceed to the practicum part.